Speaker, this is the first of a series of bills that have come before this House that I will not start by objecting to on constitutional principles. It's one of those few that have come before this House recognizing that, in fact, this is a national government function. So you will not hear me complain as much about the composition of a board that the majority leader was speaking to, as I have done in other bills that have come before this House that were essentially regulating matters that I believe are devolved functions. Number two, Mr. Speaker, I've had very interesting conversations with young people in this country and other stakeholders in the country. One of the things that I tell people who claim that they are not interested in politics is the specter of some of the things that have been said by the majority leader here, that somebody is holding a bill, a law in his hand that is going to regulate your business, and he starts by saying he doesn't understand that business. This is why I encourage people to look very carefully at the people they send to the Houses of Parliament, because at the end of the day, if you have somebody with a lawmaking power who does not understand your business, it is very easy for that person to legislate you out of business. And I am sure that the Senator for Nakuru understands exactly what I'm saying. I have very serious concerns, Mr. Speaker, about the sort of country that we are trying to create here. We are creating essentially a nanny state, a state whereby we are all considered children who need to be looked after every single hour of the day. What we eat is regulated, what you drink is regulated, how you sleep, where you sleep, who you go out with, how long you party. I mean, we are becoming too much. We are regulating everything, Mr. Speaker. At the end of the day, there is a reason why there is an age of majority. If I want to go for a looter, Senator Karen Nyamu, I am a grown-up, spending my own money. What business do you have as a legislator in my life? Mr. Speaker, this is one of those other legislations. And I want to speak as a person who has won money on numerous occasions on account of Arsenal losing. Mr. Speaker, I want to confirm that I have placed a bet on this tonight's game against Bayern Munich, because I know Arsenal are going to lose. And so as a friend of members of this House, I encourage you to make a little money today, because Arsenal is going to lose again. Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Sifuna, there is a point of order from Senator Karen Nyamu. Close in.
Mr. Speaker, I have in this House presented my issue with Aluta. It is about our young people. Is the Senator for Nairobi in order to imply that I'm trying to regulate grown-ups from partying whenever they want to? And also, in the House, Mr. Speaker, because the comeback that we are about to put up, he will silence him forever.
Yes, Senator Sifuna, you cannot bring issues to do with Arsenal without bringing a substantive motion. Substantive motion. Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, you want me to bring a substantive motion to discuss Arsenal? But the point that I was making, Mr. Speaker, and this is something that the majority leader alluded to, is that some of these things are personal choices. Although this facility is available for everyone, not everybody engages in gambling. But what we should not do, Mr. Speaker, I have seen this very worrying trend where we want to demonize and criminalize everything, so that Sherehe is being painted as something that is very evil, and somehow that it is targeting young people. Mr. Speaker, we have laws on our books to prevent operators of a club, just like this law that we are debating this afternoon. It has restrictions on the age limits of the people who can participate. There is a restriction on the age of persons who can enter into a club in Nairobi or anywhere else, Mr. Speaker. So that having the rules there should be sufficient for us not to criminalize the activities. We are trying to make sure that the activity is conducted in a manner that is safe, in a manner that does not endanger the lives of people or in fact jeopardize the future of young people. Mr. Speaker, I went through the fourth schedule to ascertain that in fact this is a function that can properly be undertaken by the national government. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the submissions by the majority leader, I think that is one of the speeches by the majority leader that has earned him applause from our side, because he has reinforced things that we've been saying about legislation that comes before this House. Not least amongst them is the need for leaders, members of parliament and members of the committees to consider bills before passing them, to read bills before passing them. I was very happy to hear him say that, because we've been sounding like madmen, some of us, when we insist that in this House we must consider bills, we must read bills and debate them, be given sufficient time to debate them. So I'm very happy that the majority leader is echoing those sentiments, Mr. Speaker, so that we can be able to debate and consider these bills. I also don't know where some of us get the moral authority, Mr. Speaker, to condemn the young people who have also learned from us that money can be made in easy ways. We have developed a society, Mr. Speaker, that encourages easy money. And we cannot be the ones to condemn people for placing a bet, Mr. Speaker, for trying their luck. So all we need to do as a House is to make sure that the activity is properly regulated. And I was trying to read through this bill and compare it with the existing legislation on betting, lotteries, and gambling to try and see what the problem or what differences there are. But I wasn't catching too many of those differences, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me start my analysis of the bill with Section 5. One of the problems I've always had with some of the legislation we pass in various sectors, Mr. Speaker, is this requirement of local ownership. It has been argued for and against. I am a strong believer that, Mr. Speaker, you end up unknowingly dissuading people from investing in your own country if you put up restrictions such as this. So if you look at Section 29 of the bill, Mr. Speaker, there is a requirement that for you to be given a license to conduct this gambling business in this country, 30% of your company has to be ceded to a local person. It is very difficult. I remember the discussions during the Energy Committee inquiry into the high cost of electricity. Mr. Speaker, it is not always easy to find somebody who has the same vision as you in business, to find somebody who's willing and ready to put up the resources that are required for you to be able to undertake that business. And, Mr. Speaker, for you to find somebody who will not abandon you along the way. I think you have seen in the betting industry, I don't want to mention names, but there are famous companies that started this, especially the online sports betting, that have ended up disintegrating. We have seen because of the squabbles amongst shareholders who were basically yoked together against their will, because the law requires that you have certain shareholding that is local. Mr. Speaker, you go to Section 68, 2 of the bill, and this is something that Senator Cherargei was worried about. I can see that it has provided that a person licensed to carry on online gambling activity shall conduct activity under a gambling control system approved by the authority, and that the authority cannot approve a system under that subsection unless you as a licensee provide, amongst other things, at subsection 2G there, responsible advertising. So what he was concerned about is something I think the legislation has already anticipated and provided for. Then, Mr. Speaker, at Section 69 of the bill, there is a definition on when the online transaction begins and when it ends. And there is a number of days, a minimum number of days that is provided for your payout to be made. So, Mr. Speaker, the concerns by Senator Cherargei that you can actually win money and the people or the betting firm refuses to remit that money is something that has also been anticipated in this particular bill, and I believe it has also been properly taken care of. I would want someone to explain to me the rationale of the minimum betting at Section 71, that in fact the minimum bet has been set at 20 shillings, Mr. Speaker, and that is inclusive of a saving component. If you bet 20 shillings, there's an amount of money that is set aside as savings for you by the ministry, I guess, or by the authority. And Mr. Speaker, that the minimum bet is set at 20 shillings. I would want some clarification from the committee, I think, during the debate on what that is about. Mr. Speaker, if you go to section 72, subsection 3, you will see what I was telling you about the need for us not to appear as if there are gaps already in legislation when it comes to protecting young people. If you read section 72, subsection 3, you see that an operator is made to require proof of age of majority prior to the registration of every player. So you cannot register as a player on an online betting site without having produced proof of your being of age of majority. So, Mr. Speaker, for me really, other than some of the concerns that have been raised by the majority leader on the adequacy of the fines for some of the penalties that have been prescribed, I believe that generally, this is one of the few pieces of legislation that have come before this House that I have minimum problems with, and that in fact, Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage us not to be in the business of demonizing everything and making everything appear unholy and ungodly, especially when it comes to choices that are being made by grown people. If indeed the feeling of Parliament is that a person of the age of 18 or any other age should probably not be exposed to some of these things, Mr. Speaker, it is very much in order for us to require even a higher age. If you say somebody to participate in gambling has to be above 30 or 40, it is possible for us as a House to do this. But for me, I don't condemn without asking myself, what are the systemic problems that have given root to some of this abuse of some of these practices and some people ending up even addicted in some of these things? Mr. Speaker, the underlying socio-economic factors are in fact the things that we as a House and leaders have to address. Somebody who has finished university 10 years ago has never got an opportunity to be employed anywhere. They have degrees, they have all these things. They need to eat, they need a place to sleep. Who are you? Who has failed to provide that environment where they can sustain themselves and pay for their expenses? Who are you to judge that person when they decide that if I make 50 shillings, I'm going to put 20 shillings on Arsenal losing this afternoon? Mr. Speaker, it is not right for us as leaders, especially when we have not been able to address the socioeconomic challenges of our young people, to then judge people and say, these people who engage in gambling are evil. Who are you, who has never provided any opportunity for people to be employed, to judge a person who has nowhere to go on Monday morning, Mr. Speaker? There is no office for them to go. If they decide to go and listen to reggae the whole day at a luta, who are you? Who are you to judge that person and say, oh, this is something that is evil and should be stopped? I think we need to end the hypocrisy in these things. As leaders, let us address the underlying socioeconomic issues, first of all. Because a person who's meaningfully employed, like I can see Commissioner there, Commissioner's diary, Mr. Speaker, is full from morning to evening, 24 days, 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. 365 days a week, and if we factor in the difficult travel schedule, Mr. Speaker, she has no time. She has simply no time to engage in some of this. She can't be seen at a luta because she has work to do. So let us focus on the socio-economic issues, Mr. Speaker, and then we can then talk about all the other issues. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute.
Honorable Senators, as we contribute to this bill, today evening there are so many youth who will be watching the game between Arsenal and Bayern Munich. Arsenal has the highest fan base. Therefore, you might be addressing people who are even, some of the fans even kill themselves when teams lose. So when the Senate the afternoon will be talking about Arsenal losing, then we are talking to the youth out there in a very negative way. So senators, avoid giving examples to that match specifically because of our youth who are out there waiting for the game in the evening. Senator Joe Newton? Okay, I can see you are not trained for this, but you're on top of the list. Senator Oloba?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to support this bill. Mr. Speaker, first of all, I would like to take note that the Committee of Labor, the Labor Committee, went through this bill and gave a report on it. And Mr. Speaker, I had the opportunity to interact with some of the issues that were highlighted by the stakeholders who are affected by the repealing of the